The bustling hum of the airport was like any other typical day. The terminal echoed with the sounds of rolling suitcases, clinking cups from nearby cafes, and the steady drone of announcements over the intercom. Travelers shuffled along, their faces lost in the chaos of rushing to their gates. But then, as if a subtle shift in the air signaled it, a soft murmur rippled through the crowd. Melania Trump and her son Barron stepped into the terminal, the aura around them instantly undeniable. They walked with quiet grace, as if the world around them had slowed down to take notice. Eyes followed them. The whispers began. To the staff, it was more than just a moment of curiosity. It was the unspoken weight of who they were. In the sea of people, they were both familiar and out of place, like a wave in a still pond that no one could ignore. As Melania and Barron neared the check-in counter, a palpable tension hung in the air. The staff behind the counter faltered. It wasn't the usual hustle of greeting guests. This was different. A young woman, fresh-faced and eager, stood frozen for a moment. Her heart raced in her chest, each beat louder than the last. Her hands, which moments ago had been calm, were now trembling slightly as she glanced nervously at her supervisor. She had seen dignitaries before, but this was Melania Trump. The weight of the moment was undeniable. The supervisor, seeing the hesitation, stepped forward. Her experience told her that no one, no matter who they were, was beyond the rules. But as her eyes met the young woman's, she too felt the discomfort of this strange situation. How was she supposed to navigate the delicate balance between professionalism and the overwhelming presence of someone so significant? The young employee forced a smile, though it felt unnatural. Inside, she struggled with the desire to treat them as she would any other passenger, fairly, equally. But her mind raced, wondering if her reaction was enough, if her service could ever measure up to the standards expected by someone like Melania. She had been trained to treat everyone with respect, but this was an encounter that no training could truly prepare her for. Her uncertainty only grew as Melania's gaze turned toward her, calm and composed, yet with an undeniable grace that made her feel both seen and small at the same time. Just then, Barron looked up at his mother, his innocent face reflecting confusion and concern. For a split second, Melania's eyes softened, and she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, silently telling him everything would be okay. But the air remained thick with tension, and it seemed like time itself had paused, awaiting the next move. The moment stretched unnervingly long as the young staff member continued typing, the click of the keyboard echoing through the tense air. Her fingers faltered, hesitating over the keys as the weight of the moment seemed to grow heavier with each second. She glanced at Melania, her calm demeanor only amplifying the storm of confusion and anxiety brewing inside her. She didn't want to make a mistake. She had to get this right. But as the system showed an error, an issue with the booking, her heart sank. The cold reality of protocol hit her like a sudden wave. Before she could utter a word, an older, more experienced colleague stepped forward, her expression stern, but not unkind. The young employee swallowed hard, hoping there was a way around the situation. But the supervisor's voice was final. "We can't make exceptions. The system doesn't lie. It's an error on the booking. I'm afraid we'll have to deny service." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. The young employee's stomach twisted. She wanted to explain, to apologize, to do something, but the rules were the rules. She could feel the eyes of the room on her, the pressure to act professionally mounting as her cheeks flushed with discomfort. Melania's lips pressed together in a thin line, her eyes steady, but there was a flicker of something underneath, a glint of disbelief, maybe even frustration. But she said nothing. Barron, standing close by, looked up at his mother with innocent confusion. The tension was thick, suffocating, and even though no words were exchanged, Barron could sense the discomfort. A child's sensitivity to emotional undercurrents was undeniable. In the midst of it all, the young employee's heart pounded louder. She could feel the conflict between what she had been trained to do and the realization that the woman standing before her wasn't just any traveler. She was Melania Trump. The complexity of the situation clouded her thoughts. She wasn't denying service out of malice. It was the system's fault. But how could she explain that? The air in the terminal grew heavier with each passing second. The staff stood silently, uncertain whether they should intervene or step back. Would Melania let this slide, or would she challenge the decision? The fear of upsetting someone so significant gripped the staff, and every eye turned to Melania for her next move. Would she push back? Or would she, as she often did, choose to remain composed and allow the moment to pass? The tense silence in the terminal lingered as everyone waited for Melania's reaction. The weight of the denial hung heavy, and the staff nervously avoided eye contact, knowing they were responsible for the uncomfortable situation. But Melania, as always, remained composed. There was no anger in her gaze, no demand in her voice, only an unmistakable grace that seemed to transcend the moment. With a soft but firm voice, she stepped forward, her movements graceful and unhurried. "I understand," she said, her words calm and measured. "We all make mistakes. I'm sure this is just a simple error." She smiled gently, as if to reassure everyone in the room, though her eyes betrayed a subtle hint of disappointment. She wasn't angry, just quietly disappointed by how the situation had unfolded. Barron stood beside her, his small frame dwarfed by the tension in the air. His innocent eyes scanned the room, trying to read the situation. When he looked up at his mother, he saw only calmness in her demeanor, a quiet strength that seemed to settle the storm around them. He had learned, even at a young age, that true power wasn't in raising your voice or demanding what you wanted. It was in knowing how to stay composed when everything else around you seemed to crumble. The young employee, still trembling from the ordeal, could hardly believe the calmness in Melania's tone. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized the weight of her own actions. It wasn't just the booking error. It was her fear and uncertainty that had escalated everything. She had been caught up in the moment, in the rush to follow protocol, and she had forgotten the most important thing: compassion. The supervisor, who had stood silently in the background, finally spoke up, her voice apologetic and sincere. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Trump," she said, her words filled with genuine remorse. "This was not handled correctly, and I sincerely apologize for the mistake. It wasn't our intention to make you feel uncomfortable." Melania's expression softened, her smile returning as she acknowledged the apology with a simple nod. "I know," she said, "but let's focus on fixing it. Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness, no matter the situation." There was a moment of quiet realization among the staff, the tension lifting as they recognized the truth in Melania's words. The kindness she had shown in that moment, even after being wronged, shifted the atmosphere entirely. No longer was there fear or hesitation, but a desire to make things right. For the young employee, that simple moment of grace would stay with her forever. It was a reminder that kindness, even in the most challenging situations, had the power to change everything. As the words of apology hung in the air, Melania took a deep breath, her composure never faltering. She didn't raise her voice, didn't demand anything. She simply looked at the supervisor and then at the young employee who had hesitated, who had been unsure. A soft but sincere smile curved her lips. "It's all right," she said. "I understand how difficult things can get. Mistakes happen. The important thing is how we fix them." Barron, standing by her side, looked up at his mother with quiet admiration. In that moment, he saw not just a mother, but a woman of strength. Someone who, even in the face of frustration, chose kindness over confrontation. His eyes softened, and for a moment he forgot about the discomfort of the situation, knowing that his mother was showing him something far more valuable: the power of grace. The supervisor, her face flushed with guilt, stepped forward, her voice trembling as she offered a deeper apology. "Mrs. Trump, I can't tell you how sorry we are for this. We should have handled it better. This wasn't just about the error. It was our failure to treat you with the respect you deserve." Her eyes flickered to the young employee beside her, who was now nodding in agreement, visibly relieved that Melania had chosen understanding over anger. Melania's gaze softened as she looked at them both, the tension in her posture easing. "It's okay," she said again, this time her voice infused with warmth. "I'm not upset, just please take care of it." She didn't dwell on the mistake. Instead, she exuded an air of patience, a patience that seemed to seep into the very walls of the terminal, calming everything in its wake. The staff, now visibly more at ease, began to offer their apologies, their voices sincere, almost grateful for the opportunity to make things right. The young employee, who had been so nervous just moments before, smiled slightly, an apology in her eyes as she spoke softly. "We truly appreciate your understanding, Mrs. Trump." Melania nodded and turned her attention to Barron, who, for the first time, seemed less concerned with the situation and more at peace. There was no tension between them and the staff anymore, only a mutual understanding and a newfound sense of respect. As the staff worked swiftly to resolve the issue, a strange calm settled over the terminal. The initial anxiety had evaporated, replaced by a sense of reconciliation. The young employee took a moment to reflect on how her fear had led her to act hastily, but now, she saw the value of approaching every situation with patience and empathy. This moment, though small, was a lesson in humanity, a reminder that the power of kindness could dissolve even the heaviest of moments. As Melania and Barron walked toward the gate, the weight of the entire experience seemed to melt away. The terminal, which had moments ago been thick with tension, now seemed quieter, almost serene. Melania's graceful presence lingered in the air, and Barron walked beside her, his small hand clasped in hers. She was composed, yet there was a softness to her that spoke volumes. Before she reached the gate, she turned back toward the staff, who had gathered at the counter, still processing the events of the past few minutes. She looked at the young employee, the one who had been most nervous, and smiled. "Thank you for your help," she said, her voice warm but firm, the gratitude in her words reaching deeper than any formality. The young employee's heart swelled. She had expected Melania to leave in a hurry, maybe with a word of frustration or an impatient sigh, but instead, the kindness had only grown. It was like a soft, unspoken lesson, one that would remain with her forever. Melania and Barron continued on their way, and the young employee stood frozen for a moment, watching them disappear through the terminal doors. Something shifted inside her, a deep sense of awe and respect that she couldn't quite explain. It was more than just the fact that they were famous. It was the way Melania had handled the entire situation, calm, poised, and completely unruffled. It was a model of grace that she could carry with her, a quiet strength that transcended the moment. The supervisor, who had watched the interaction from the side, turned to the young employee. "That was something," she murmured, her voice still tinged with awe. The young employee nodded, unable to fully express what she was feeling. She knew that this moment, this encounter, would stay with her for a long time. As the staff went back to their duties, there was a change in the air. The tension had lifted, and in its place was a renewed sense of purpose. The lesson wasn't just about handling a high-profile passenger. It was about how to deal with discomfort, with mistakes, with each other. In the face of adversity, the most powerful thing you could do was show kindness. The young employee promised herself that she would carry this lesson forward. She wouldn't just serve passengers, she would listen, connect, and offer the same grace that Melania had shown her. No matter how tense a situation seemed, kindness was always the key to transforming it. As the day went on, the staff found themselves working together with a renewed sense of unity. The little ripple of kindness had spread through the room, leaving everyone a little bit better, a little bit stronger. And that, in the end, was the true power of the moment. A quiet reminder that even the smallest acts of grace could leave an everlasting mark. Remember, kindness has the power to transform any situation. How have you experienced the power of grace in your own life? Share your story in the comments below, and let's continue spreading positivity together.